Time for us to go big. I want to introduce the panelists. To my left is Tejune Kang with 6D Technologies, a technology company. The cool thing about Tejune that's different from everybody else is that in December of 2014, he took his company public on NASDAQ. Yes, he did. And the other cool thing about Tejune is that he's also an EO member. So this is what happens when you become EO, you go public.
We also work together, too.
There you go. Yeah. To his left is this guy by the name of Lowell Hawthorne. Now, you may walk down the street and see these little storefront areas with these big yellow awnings with orange writing on them, and you go in and you get this really incredible Jamaican food, those beef patties and the jerk chicken. That's his fault. Lowell is the CEO of Golden Crust Caribbean Bakery. They're the largest Caribbean franchise in the country. And actually, it's a good friend of mine. So please welcome Lowell Hawthorne, CEO of Golden Crust. And Lowell's also the author of The Baker's Son, which is that book that you guys have in your lap. At the end of the event, when we're done, come on up, and Lowell will probably be happy to sign it for you. And last but not least is my good friend Rich Dennis of Sundial Fragrances. Very large companies. Now, I'm not allowed to tell you how much revenue, but they do really well. So Rich is going to actually tell you how to make a lot of money in a relatively short period of time. So the format is that we're going to kind of try to keep this informal. We're going to kind of get some questions going. The thought process about when we created this was that we really wanted to get some very, very large companies and go on a journey with them, from how they started from zero, and pretty much everybody here started at zero, to growing their companies into the hundreds of millions of dollars, and get a sense of the challenges that they face, the mindset that one has to have to go that big. Let me start off with Lowell. Lowell, let me ask you something. What was your inspiration for starting Golden Crust?
Let me just begin quickly by thanking you for putting on this forum and the leadership of this great organization. I want to also recognize the Golden Crust executive team. I got Nataki, got Tanika, my wife Lorna for the last 31 years, and still counting. My son Omar, who is the Director of Franchise Development and Community Affairs. My other son Darren Hawthorne, who is the Executive Vice President of Franchise and Corporate Counsel. My niece Latalia, who's our Marketing Manager. And of course, one of our fine interns and now accountant for the company, Jordan.
Thank you. And I'm a long-lost cousin, right?
Sorry. So as you can see, it's a family affair. The Golden Crust concept and idea was born in Jamaica through my parents. I'm a product of Jamaica, and my dad had a large establishment in Jamaica, and he actually operated his baker for over 50 years. That is where I've learned the very heart of baking fine Caribbean cuisine. There they taught me integrity, character, hard work, and determination, and just great family values. I came to the United States in 1981. I had the privilege in working for NYPD as an accountant, making some $19,000 a year. I actually retired. I resigned to speak in 1993. I remember working for NYPD, and I actually took what is considered then to be paternity leave of absence, never to return, and the rest is history. Can you imagine paternity leave back in 1989, and my son Darren was just a baby then, and today. But fast forwarding, it was a vision that I shared with my siblings. 7 brothers and sisters, along with my wife, to somewhat go back to what we do best, which is the bakery business. Having had some kind of accounting experience with NYPD, I was able to employ the same skill set in the Golden Crust organization. And from there, my family bought into the vision, they bought into the concept and the whole idea of entrepreneurship. And we began with one store in Gunner Road in the Bronx. And from there, We have expanded to over 120 stores in 9 states, distributing patties in over 12,000 supermarkets throughout the United States, and also supplying the international market as well.
So in essence, you took a culture that you came from, the Western Union culture, and you made it into one of the largest Caribbean franchises in the country. So it seems to me that your upbringing is what inspired you to build this business.
I guess that is correct. And as I said earlier, having had great parents, having had a vision and the ability to execute that vision, it has been said that vision without execution is nothing more than hallucination.
Great. Rich Dennis, tell us about Sundial Fragrances. How did that get created? What inspired you, and what got you here?
This thing is on it. So, not too different from Lowell. Born and raised in Liberia, Liberia, West Africa. Father is Liberian, mother Sierra Leone. Came here to go to college. Actually went to college with 2 of the guys in here who surprised me, didn't know they were going to be here. Thanks for showing up, guys. When we graduated, my best friend in college, as well as my partner today and my mother, who had come to go to my college graduation and couldn't go home because the war had started in Liberia. This was back in '91. And in Sierra Leone, and so we started making, and my grandmother had made and sold different hair and skincare preparations in our village market in Sierra Leone. So we started making that in New York and selling it on the streets of New York. So, you know, 2 guys with bachelor's in education selling soap on the street. And we're here today. We've you know, it's been as I'm sure it's same with both of you guys, it's been a rough road. It hasn't been, you know, we haven't been without our challenges and without our losses along the way, but in the end, we're still together as a team, and, you know, today we're selling our brands in Whole Foods and Target and Walgreens and Walmart, and today we're the #1 multicultural beauty company in America.
Tejune, I have a different question for you. What possessed you? What was the thought process that made you take your company public on NASDAQ, no less, in December 2014? Walk us through where you were before you went there, the whole process to give you the courage to do it, and the whole process of just doing it.
So this is called Go Big or Go Home, right? So this part 1, part 2 is what? Swing for the fences? Is that? In terms of the thought process, I mean, it'll probably be helpful if I start with just the background of myself, the company. You know, I'm originally from California, was born and raised out there, moved out to New York about 2 years ago. Super competitive, only child. So I don't know where my ambition always came from. You know, I always asked my dad, I was like, why am I never good enough? You know, do I have daddy issues? Who knows, right? So I looked at like myself and said, you know, my dad always told me, you know, one of the things he told me was second place is first place loser. So the whole point was if you're going to do something, do your best and win and be competitive and things of that nature. So I took that to heart. So, and from a background perspective, I come from technology. I've always been doing technology my whole life. I saw from the analog days, from VHS to beta tape to you know, the laser discs and so forth. So I saw the whole evolution as well. And personally, I've always been interested in technology. I started working at PeopleSoft really early on. Then I went to Oracle and started my own company. Had Boeing, HP, and Apple very early on. I was doing ERP, data warehouses, building out dashboards for senior executives. And at some point, I realized that, hey, this area is starting to die. 2008 financial crisis hit. Funding, you know, was pretty much dry. CFO budgets were frozen. And a lot of IT workers being outsourced to India. So I had to really think long and hard, what am I going to do? I let go of pretty much all my employees. And it was very, very tough. One of the people I let go, she was pregnant. And it was tough for me to do. I gave her as much severance as I could. And I just did the best I could. And around 2010, I decided to restart the company. I had 2 employees when I restarted and tried different things. And grew organically from 2010 exponentially 35 to 40% year over year. And it got to a point where, because we were purely services at the time, which I'm sure many other EO members are, it's hard to get financing. So it got to a point where I had to figure out, where do I get money from? And what that basically means is that I have to make payroll. I have to pay my employees to make sure that they continue to work, whereas I'm waiting for my customers to pay me. And the customers, the accounts receivables, I was waiting for them to pay their bills, and it got to a point where I couldn't float the capital anymore. So AR began to grow from 300,000, which I could float myself, then 6,000, 900,000. I got friends and family to invest some money. And it got to a point where it was $1.5 million, almost $2 million. So now I had to figure out, what do I do? Like, how do I float this much money? So to answer your question, Richard, I'd really look at what are the various sources of capital I can get out there. So then I looked at, well, I can go to family offices, I can go to private equity. And some of the EO members know that I struggled through this because I shared it. And I said, are our customers paying on time? How do I finance this? Do I go with factoring? Factoring, they charge you a lot of money. ABLs, asset-based lines. So I got a bunch of proposals. But one of the things I always really kept to my heart was equity. And I've always been a risk taker. One of the things that Corey shared was about living life with no regrets. I've embraced that my whole life. So if I were to die today, I would say I did everything I could. And just push as hard as I can and do everything I can. So, and then also in terms of equity comes in play as well. I didn't want to give up ownership because I believed in myself. I didn't want to give out equity to investors, and I also wanted to control the company. So as I explored all the different options, from private equity to family offices to VC money to everything out there, there's a whole slew of choices. I decided I would do factoring for a little bit. Then I got into asset-based lines. Then I turned to asset-based lines, had a bunch of covenants, bank covenants. And I'm not sure if you guys are running into this or not, but they start saying, well, you have to have a tangible net worth of this amount. You have to park so much money here. You need to park $1 million with us. And I said, okay, fine. If I park $1 million with you, how much can I borrow? And they said, 1.5. And I said, why would I do that? It doesn't make any sense. So one of the things that came up was going public. And I think I was only afforded this option when I moved to New York. I moved to New York about 2 years ago. And then I said, well, there's so many different financial vehicles in New York. This is the finance capital of the world. Then I had to decide, well, how do I finance my growth? So, and then the whole concept of going public came up. And then in my mind, I was thinking, well, don't you have to be a $200, $500 million company to go public? Everyone hears about Twitter and Facebook and all these big IPOs. And what I learned was that there's many, many companies that go public that don't go that route. Blockbuster, Waste Management, Occidental, and Berkshire Hathaway. So these companies go public through a faster route, and once they're public, now you have the platform to grow. And people congratulate me. They're personal friends and family. Wow, congratulations, you're public. Must be exciting. But to me, it feels like it's day one. Now I'm at a playing field where I can now grow a new platform, if you will. So as I explored it, and these are some of the conversations I had with Richard, so we go back even before EO, was how does this work? You got to get an audit done, a PCAOB audit, full transparency. So then I went through that process and looked at a bunch of different options. And then I'd explore, well, if I get money by being public, how long can that go for? And those, that was a long story to your answer, but those are all the things I had to think through my head. I got the money I needed. Now we're public, we're on NASDAQ, and I could continue going to the market as well. So that's the primary reason why I went public.
But what are some of the challenges that you faced with going public?
There's many. Where do I start?
With a private company, it's not accidental that the Mercedes car note gets on the company bill, or, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? with a public company, there's far more scrutiny in terms of what you can and can't do. So do you feel that additional, could you talk a little bit about the additional scrutiny that you have running a public company and whether the trade-offs, and has it been, big question, has it been worth it?
For me, yes, absolutely. Because there's no other way I can continue to grow. If you are a true believer in go big or go home, and you want to build an enterprise, worldwide, global company, then absolutely. It's absolutely necessary. And that's just my personal belief, which is why I did it. If you want to be a lifestyle company and have the benefits and the perks and have an S Corp and have some ability to control how much compensation you have and set aside some money and pay for your kids and hire your kids to be models for the company calendar or whatever it might be in terms of perks. 401k matching 100%. I'm just saying, there's a lot of perks to being private, absolutely, there is. But for me, I wanted to go big. I wanted to go as big as possible, and what better than by being public? What better by being public and knowing that I can do that? So you're absolutely right, Richard. In terms of public scrutiny, I mean, BDO is our auditor. I also decided to go BDO in terms of from an audit perspective. They're one of the top 5, 6, along with Grant Thornton in the world. So it costs money. It costs a lot of money. It costs legal fees. I think I have more than 7 law firms representing us now, multiple lawyers from each law firm. So it's very, very costly, and it comes with a price. So you have to have the scale and the vision and the desire, because the type of challenges you face on a day-to-day basis are completely different. And it's the true definition of working on your business versus working in your business, which also means you have to focus on the people that you hire and retain and the talent. Your head of sales, your head of delivery, your head of development, or your operational people, you have to trust them because you don't have time to be working inside the business.
Great. I want to kind of switch to a different topic. One of the things that we've talked about in EO for you non-EO members is the issues around working with your spouse or working with family members. We've actually had sessions on that. I see these two over here. Like, yeah, we're fighting later on. We've had sessions on that. We actually have this thing called Spousal Forum, where we send our spouses to go and meet once a month, where they talk about issues that come up being married to an entrepreneur. So we're very serious about this whole spousal issue because, if the spousal thing doesn't work out, it can get kind of expensive. You know what I'm saying? So now, when you look at the Lowell Hawthorne, when you look at Rich Dennis, I mean, Rich has got his wife in the business. He's got all kinds of relatives in the business. He's got his mother in the business. Lowell's got, well, he already introduced you to his tribe and his wife. So, Rich and Lowell, can you talk to us about some of the challenges of having family members in your business and how you guys, work around that and how it's been beneficial? Lorna, I don't know if you want to leave or...
As I said earlier, the Golden Cross organization was built in a solid family foundation. Having operated a family business over the last 25 years, it requires me personally to work much harder because one has to lead by example, and that is important. What is also important, one cannot demonstrate nepotism within the organization, and you have to capitalize on your family members' strengths and their weaknesses. Where there are weaknesses, you have to employ folks from the outside to carry out those functions. I had to make a very tough decision 15 years ago. Once I decided I was going to franchise route, I had to basically eliminate the family board membership and bring in a professional board to grow the organization to the next level. You have to be able to articulate that to your family member, that at the end of the day, it's about the return and the investment. My wife, she has been the HR director for the last 25 years, doing a fabulous job. She has the skill set, she got the education and the experience. Each of my other siblings, where their strengths have been and what they have learned in the past, those are the positions and the role that they have continued to play. One of my brothers, for instance, a wonderful young man, spent many years working for Ford Motor as an auto mechanic, one of the greatest technicians you can find. 25 years later, that's what he does, fix machinery. He may be my partner, but that is his strength. You cannot use someone without the skill sets, the knowledge to be your office manager or to be your accountant. I am an accountant, I have financial background, so I've served the organization over the last 25 years as a CEO and CFO, because that is my strength. And I think it works very well for Golden Cross organization.
Rich, tell us about your family stories.
Well, so to start off, in my family, I'm only CEO because I'm not smart enough to do anything else. The rest of them run it. But very similar situation. My mother is a founder along with my best friend. So we don't just have the immediate family. I've also got my best friend. And my sister, my wife, my brother-in-law, but same principles, right? Is if you're not better than anybody that I could go out and recruit and bring in, then you don't have this role, right? It's just that simple. And we've done it that way for 25 years. And Richard knows our organization for a long time. And so that discipline is what has been able to carry us. Now, what I will say, and I'm sure Lowell has the same experience, when you put that discipline in place and you can rely on your family members in key roles to execute at the highest of levels, there's a sense of comfort and strength that allows you to go out and tackle things that you ordinarily will not, because you know what's happening, back at the ranch. And as I said, we've had some very tough times. There's several times that we should have been out of business, but because of that structure and that saying, hey, we've got to buckle down, we've got to take care of these issues. We've got to solve them. If it's debt, you got to go figure out how to get it paid. Let's figure it out. If it's employee issues, you got to figure out, say, hey, how do we solve this together? And can you spell me for a minute while I go do this? So I think it's a very, when you can have some discipline in how you engage your family members, not, you're my brother, so come in and let's do this, but you may be my brother, but there's all of these other things that you need to be able to know how to do. And oh, by the way, if I can find somebody that can do it as good as you, I'm going with them. That allows you to be able to scale. Now, what we've done though is, it's a very painful thing. So if you ever decide to do this, we can talk about it. But what we've done is we got to a point of where we said, okay, there are things that we do as a family extraordinarily well, right? We're entrepreneurs. We know how to bootstrap. We understand the consumer better than anybody else in the space, we think. We know how to formulate products based on our heritage and what we've done. But none of us is really a CFO of the caliber that we need to be to scale this business, right? My cousin was our chief marketing officer. He's great at the brand strategy, but he's not the guy that's going to come up with the strategy to go sell one more SKU in that one more door, all right? So we needed a CMO. So it's been about 3 months now, and one of our new team members, Latravia Smith, who's our SVP of communications now. So we decided about 6 months ago that we were going to take the family out of operating the business on a day-to-day. And those of us that had different skill sets in different parts of the organization would go on to do that. So Nima gave up his CFO role. We brought in a CFO. Emmett gave up his CMO role. We brought in a new CMO, a P&G guy. I gave up my sales role. We brought in a chief customer officer, a J&J guy. So we've, my sister, we brought in a Cody guy to run operations, and she now runs innovation. So what we did was we said, look, if we're going to scale and if we're going to compete with the best of them, we've learned a lot of lessons over the past 24 years. If we were as great as finance, we wouldn't have gotten into some of the financial troubles that we got into, right? If we were as great as marketing as some of these guys, we wouldn't have got into some of the issues we got into with Macy's, where we had too much product on the shelf and we couldn't pull it, right? So we made a conscious decision that we were going to grow and that we were going to give up these roles and bring in people that could actually help us scale and help us compete on the next level. So that's what we've done. They're tough conversations to have. So like I said, I'll give you my card, holla. But at some point, we all have these visions for what we want our families to be. And sometimes we have a vision that they don't necessarily have, right? And we drive them, and you end up where because now I'm thinking about children, right? You drive them, and some of them can drive with you, and some of them can't. And so to be able to provide them an infrastructure that will allow them to scale up to their levels, along with the disciplines as to how you elevate to the next level, I think is very important. And so it's only been about 3 months with this for us. We think it's working well. Latrivia can attest to the challenges with that, because it's not easy bringing in all of these people into a new culture. But we think that it's the right thing to do, and we're seeing signs of the ability to scale now and move faster at retail, and so that's where we are.
Yeah, what I think also that works for the organization is the exposure that you do give your children. One of the things I've done, and for example, my niece, she's doing her MBA at Fordham. She's there to basically interact and network. My son Omar, he had to become a certified franchise executive before he could have gotten the position that he has. My son had to go to law school to play his part. My niece, who's a marketing manager, although she's my niece, she got a double master's, and that is important. So they got to go out and get the education. They got to get the skill sets so they can come and apply it to the organization. The concept here is you got to search within for the skills and the experiences. If these skills or experiences are not internally, then you got to get them on the outside. And the concept works for the organization.
So you guys are doing very well now, but there was a time when you have been kind enough to share that you weren't that big, that you were running through the struggle. Before we talk about your significant revenue growth and some of the challenges you faced getting there and how it impacted your culture, let's kind of tee this up. Could you describe the one light bulb going on idea that put your company on the road to its current success? What was that light bulb idea that got you started down the road to this phenomenal success?
I guess for my organization personally, the light bulb for me came in 1996 when I became a franchisor. For me, that was just a phenomenal achievement. It was a lifelong dream. I remember when I began the research, my attorney, we had about 30 stores. And when I invited my franchise attorney to join us, our being in quest for that perfect attorney, I remember I met an attorney in Manhattan to remain nameless, and he told me then, I'm the best guy to hire because I'm the guy that wrote the uniform franchise agreement. But he was charging me $500 an hour at the time. So I traveled all the way to Dutchess County, and I found a guy that was charging $145. And so one guy said, I wrote the book. The other guy said, I understand the book. So you don't go with the guy who have read the book, you're going with the guy who have written the book. But I chose the guy who have read the book, and he did a phenomenal job, and he's still with us as our franchise attorney.
And then you went on to write a book.
To this very day. But what's important about being a franchisor, and that is something that I really appreciate, being able to earn revenue and make money while you're sleeping. Earning royalties and advertisement and the ability to do that electronic funds transfer once a week. And it works well based on your brand. And 20 years ago I met Richard, and he spoke eloquently, and the subject he spoke on was cash is king. And I never forget that. And I often spoken, and I have spoken several times on the importance of branding. Richard is known for cash is king, and I'm known for branding. Even my custom shirt, I still wear my Golden Cross logo. I live it, I eat it, I sleep it. It's all about the brand. And you cannot be a franchisor unless you have that brand, unless you own that brand. And that's what makes the Golden Crust brand so powerful.
Hey, Rich, what was your light bulb going on moment? What was the thing, the aha moment that moved your company on the road to success?
Dude, like I told you, I got my job because I wasn't smart enough to do the other job. So I didn't necessarily have I don't think I had a single light bulb moment, but I will say I think the thing that that shifted sort of the direction for us was when we decided that we would go to Macy's. And we went to Macy's and had no idea of how the business operated, how the business of prestige retail operated. And up until then, we had sold sort of in direct channels. And so we go to Macy's and they start ordering products and we're selling a ton of product. And this is great. And we had one Macy's door, then 2, then 50, then 100. And then we started getting these things called chargebacks coming back, right? Which is what they bill you back for the labor and for the lights and for the gift with purchase and with all this stuff. But what we learned there was that we could sell a lot of product, that we had a product that everybody wanted to buy, and we could sell it in Macy's, right? And we could sell a ton of it. And so as we started to do the work to understand all of the different costs in there, we learned 2 things. One is that we will never go to prestige without understanding how to do it again or go anywhere. But more than that, when you have that kind of catastrophic failure, and you can find the success, that silver lining, and everything that you fail at, there's that silver lining. And that one learning was, we've got a great product that people want to buy, we've just got to find the right distribution model. And so that experience led us to find other retail partners with distribution models that we could understand, and that's when we took the brand mass. And so I think that was sort of the catalyst for us.
Tejune, I guess somebody in the surface could say your aha moment was the decision to go public. Is that an accurate statement? Or was there some other additional light bulb going on moment that's impacted your company's growth?
Is this aha in terms of growth strategy or in terms of what?
That one thing that put you on the path to success.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's hire the right people. I think going public is just part of the journey.
Okay.
If you don't have the right people, you're not going to get there, no matter what it is or where you're going. Or that's my biggest learning lesson. When I first started the company in 2004, I hired friends, family, people that could help support me, and they're extremely loyal. But the challenge was I didn't get a high enough level of capacity of output. They're very loyal. I knew they were playing fantasy football half the time, joking around, great culture. But at the end of the day, I was like, we can do so much more. And we did a lot. I'm not complaining about how we did. We went from 300,000 to 900,000 to 1.8 million. So we were growing exponentially. But the bottom line was we could have been like a $20 million company, but we weren't getting that level of output. So when I had to restart the company, I said, let me hire people with fire in the belly that just want to win. And that's what I told people. That was my aha moment, was hire the right people. I basically said, the world is full of mediocrity. If you want to be mediocre, there's a door. And that's the polite way of saying it. If you want to win the Super Bowl, let's play to win. And that's when I started getting performance. And the aha moment, a consultant I hired said, you got a lot of people, but they're like out of shape. It's like a person out of shape. You put them on a treadmill, they're not going to be gasping for breath. So the people you want are going to be self-motivated because they just want to win. And loyalty and everything else is icing on the cake. And fortunately, I got both. I got people that were extremely hardworking that A players you don't have to manage. And that's been the whole concept. We talk about top grading A players, B players, all that stuff. But when you truly get an A player, they love to win. And it's not, and it doesn't have to be a nasty way where it's a Shark Tank and people are, bad to each other, but the people make the biggest difference. And if people aren't working out, you got to figure out a way to replace them. That was my aha moment. So going public, that's part of the journey. Now it's even, it's a bigger game. I got to figure out the A players at this level. What are the firms I need to work with? Who are the professionals? Who do I need to hire? How do I motivate them? How do I have them play nice in the sandbox that I have? Because now you got A players that have egos. And with those egos, it's like, well, I got to get them to get along.
So you're constantly engaged in the conversation about how the culture of your organization has to shift as you move from level to level. Is that an accurate statement?
Absolutely. I believe in, the whole concept of what got you here won't get you there, right? So the culture, and it's tough because there's one of my personal core values is loyalty. So how do I let someone go that's been extremely loyal to me from day one? And I don't know when that shift happened. So I was very, when I looked at giving titles away, I mean, if you're only a 3-person shop and you call this person associate, junior sales associate, it's pretty crappy, right? I mean, you got to call him a sales VP so people take his calls. But at some point, he's no longer a sales VP. So what do? You say, sorry, you know what? You're just not cutting anymore. I'm going to hire a real sales VP. It crushes the morale of the person. So how do you bring this person along with you? So some people learn and grow. And a good analogy that I've used and I've learned over time is that we're going to continue to grow. And if you don't continue to grow individually, then you're going to miss out and you're not going to be part of the newer company. So I encourage everyone to grow, and that's part of our culture as well, is constant growth, learning, and which EO is all about, right? I mean, that's why we're here, we're learning, we're growing, but that culture has to be pervasive throughout the organization, and people have to want to do it.
Well, let me ask you a question, another pitch for us. How has your EO membership and experience helped you learn the typical skills the type of skills that you would need to manage the cultural issues that you face and the growing pains that you face as a company?
Well, the biggest challenges, I think, in being an entrepreneur and just a founder in general is how do you bounce ideas off of people, right? No one understands. You could talk to your number 2, number 3 person, unless you have a full partner. I didn't. I had partnerships, and someone told me, sell any shit but a partnership. So I said, okay, that makes sense. So, and I had a fallout. I lost a best friend. So the things I've done are all learning lessons. I had a partner who's so smart, super smart. He skipped like 3 grades. We had an import-export company, and learned Japanese in like 2 weeks, and he was just phenomenal. But he was so smart that I think he just took life for granted. He's just like, I know what I'm doing. I'm smart. I can catch up, but he just didn't pull his weight. So I had a fallout. He was a friend from elementary school, and it was extremely tough for me. So this is an example of experience sharing, right? What we do in EO. So through that process, I said, well, if you have a partnership, it's great because you have a sounding board. But the bad side is if they're not performing, how do you buy someone out? What's that process like? So I said, I'm just going to go solo, knowing that it's going to be very tough for me. But I set my mind to let me hire the best people. So from an EO perspective, I think the biggest benefit, at least, is the ability to have a sounding board. It's extremely lonely, when you're an entrepreneur. Even if you do have partners, you're going, what am I supposed to do? This guy says this guy says that. What's the right decision? And having a sounding board where maybe your whole forum is telling you you're an idiot because you're not making the right decision, then you start thinking, well, maybe I am. So because no one in your company is going to tell you that. And then when you do fire someone or you let that person go, everyone's like, finally, the guy got it. Duh. So you realize these aha moments a lot faster. And that's been my experience. And when when I was in California, I was part of other forums or certain things like that. But just having a group of other founders, owners, entrepreneurs, people that you can bounce ideas off of, because no one's going to understand the shoes you wear and the situation you're in that perspective.
Staying on this topic of culture, let's, Rich, why don't you take us through a timeline of your company? Tell us within that timeline what percentage growth your company had, and then kind of shift gears and tell us how your culture had to change in order to be able to sustain that growth.
Well, it's been 24 years, so it's the whole 24.
Why don't we just pick a point in time? Let's say at a time, let's say you were at $5 million, and then take us to the present.
Well, the thing with growth is as you said, the skill sets that it takes to run a $5 million company are very different than the skill sets it takes to run a $10 million company. It's very different for a $20 million company. And so what you find is that as you bring in different skill sets, those skill sets come with different experiences. Those experiences come at varying costs, right? So you talked about title. So you bring in a guy that is, knows how to run sales of a $50 million company. He's got a different expectation than the guy that knows how to do it at 5, right, or at 25. And so when you start to bring in that talent, the culture changes because the expectations start to change. The habits that it takes to do a larger enterprise from a small to medium-sized enterprise are different. And so now you have to start integrating those. And then to your point, you start off with people and you're very loyal to them and they're very loyal to you, and you want to keep that loyalty. And so as you bring in other folks, you want to capture those same things that drove that loyalty. But now the people that were there before feel like, I worked for 5 years before I got health insurance. This guy walks in on day one and he gets health insurance, right? And so that starts to create some issues internally. So for us, what we've done is said, look, here are our values, and we will only hire people that can align with those values. Whether they're people that will be here to grow this company to as big as we can grow it, or whether it was people that were here when we were, dipping incense. And so when you align to those values and you stay true to them, you can start to preserve the elements of the culture, but you can't scale, right? So how do you scale? The way you scale is that by bringing those folks that come from different cultures and different experiences together, and then truly giving them an opportunity to impact the culture that you already have, and giving yourself an opportunity to take what's good about your culture and to explode it with some of the experiences that other people have had, so that everybody can now own the culture. So for us, it's been it's been like this culture thing has been like drinking through a fire hose, because, in the past, just in the past 3 months alone, we've added on about 150 people. So but we were so rooted in who we were, what we were, the things that we did, how we did them, why we did them, that when you bring folks in, it's a lot easier to tell them, this is how we do things, this is why we do them this way. When you have a challenge, this is how you approach it. We don't yell and scream. We don't do anything that. So one of the big things is when you bring in all these people, how do you get everybody rowing in the same direction? And that's communication, right? And that's sharing information. So don't hog the information. I got something, over communicate it, share it out. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge, but if you don't focus on the culture and you only focus on the growth, it's going to collapse.
Just out of curiosity, and Laura, I'll let you jump in. You just talked about hiring an extra 150 people. What kind of percentage growth have you had over the last 5 years from an increase standpoint, 5 to 7 years?
Well,
from a revenue standpoint.
So our growth percentage over the past 5 years is somewhere around 2,500%. So it's been significant growth. Yeah.
That's impressive.
Well. Thank you.
Lowell, you were going to share something?
Yeah. I have never operated my business like a party shop, and that is important. I've always operated my business like a Fortune 500 company, applying the right business plan, applying the right strategic plan, and having the proper AOP in place. The culture of the organization, as I said earlier, it's about what I've dubbed the SHANs: executions, mobilizations, implementations, and celebration. And celebration is about celebrating your employee. I am pleased and so proud of so many of my employees, including my controller. The controller within my organization was once a cashier at one of our franchise stores. And these are the success stories that certainly I like to share. As far as the growth in the organization over the years, we actually began in 1989. We opened approximately 17 stores in 5 years. We became a franchisor in 6 years. And in 2000, we expanded the company significantly. Our growth model is very simple. It comprises of the following: retail stores, which encompasses distribution in all the supermarkets throughout the United States; club stores; institutions, which is the school system, the penal systems, and of course corporate stores; and franchising and real estate. We are a real estate holding company by default because we hold the leases on all the franchise locations, or we own the sites. And that is the only way we can control the franchisees from changing name from Golden Crust to Mama's Kitchen. But the growth has been phenomenal. We have a 4-year contract with the New York City school systems. Each month, Golden Crust supplies the school system here, just in New York City, with over 1 million beef patties. We are in the Costco stores. We are also halal. We believe in staying very true to our vision. Golden Crust exists to take the taste of the Caribbean to the world. You cannot take the taste of the Caribbean to the world unless you are halal, kosher, and all the others. And we make sure that our sauces are kosher. We make sure our patties are halal for that particular population. And because we want to stay true to our vision and continue to grow the concept. We have grown to over $100 million in sales system-wide over the last 20 years in business.
Tejune, part of being a public company is having equity to do acquisitions. My understanding is your company just did their first acquisition?
Actually, we did two. I want to talk about culture for a minute,
Sure.
Just to kind of, because I think these are very valid points. And every company has a culture. You either have a culture by default or by design, right? So if you don't influence what the culture is, then you're not going to have control of what it's going to be. So it's important that you shape and change the culture as you see fit, that fits you. And what I've learned is it's really about being authentic. And what does that mean by being myself? So if I'm going to be a mean boss, then be a mean boss. If I'm going to be short and patient, my patience is not there, then you got to be real with yourself. And if you're fake, then your employees and people know. But at least be real, and you're not, you're being authentic. That's a big piece of it. I know culture also is a very hot topic these days. Culture eats strategy for lunch. It's all about culture. Zappos is great, this, that. I personally struggle with that. Because when I think about the chicken or the egg, what comes first, right? Do you have a great culture, which, everyone knows if you have great culture, work productivity goes up, employee morale is great, they work harder, and you get great output. So is it as simple as you buy a bunch of ping pong tables and foosball tables, and all of a sudden you're going to be profitable? So I struggle with that because when you look at companies that are extremely well known for their culture, they're also very profitable. So I think you have to have both. That's what I would posture. So people talk about Google, it's a great company. Well, they're making a whole lot of profit too, right? So when you're making a lot of money, you can afford to do a lot of great things. So that's part of the thing I struggle with within our organization, especially we're in technology. And technology is super hot right now. So now you're also dealing with millennials, you're dealing with generational things, and you got to figure out what's the right culture. It's got to be interesting. How are they changing the world? How do you keep them motivated? So all these things, I think, are a balance. And and from a growth perspective, the faster you run, the more winds at your face, which basically means you got to shift the culture constantly, quickly, and our culture changes almost every 2 months, honestly. Like people, so what brings us together? It's really about push each other to the highest potential of the human spirit, whatever that might mean. So we're in constant learning growth and things of that nature. That's really, that's, I don't want to go too deep in the culture piece of it, but that's just my own personal philosophy. And I open that conversation up. I restarted the company in 2010 with only 2 employees. So if I sit down with 2 people and say, what's the culture about? To me, it's more about RGAs. It's revenue generating activities. If you're not doing an RGA, then get off your butt and let's go to work. And then it's been more about execution. So now it's, okay, well, what is our culture? We're looking at, all our employees and things of that nature. So going to your question about going public and acquisitions, it's a platform. So that's why I think it's the beginning. Being public is part of the journey. So if you want to go big, that's the place to do it. And why is that? I'll talk about a couple of threats that I have as a business. Again, being in technology, my biggest threat is retention. So our competitors are constantly trying to poach our people, especially Q1. Q4, everyone's kind of laying low. You got Christmas, and you got all the holidays and Thanksgiving, so no one wants to change jobs. But Q1, we call it poaching season. People go out, and they're being constantly attacked, saying, hey, come work for us. We're great. And these are our partners, too. These are, like this could be Adobe, this could be Oracle. Hey, we're partners. We'll sell licenses together. But another department hires one of our people. I'm like, I thought we're partners. What happened? So those are some of the challenges. And what do you do about that? So to me, being public, now I can give them currency, right? I can say, listen, guys, you guys have you have a stake in the game. Here's some stock options. And I personally can't sell something I don't believe in. And there's a whole concept of, if you're an entrepreneur, yeah, you can give private stock. Well, it's called a phantom stock for a reason. So if I'm an employee and I work for an owner, and he says, here's some phantom stock, but you can't vote on it. You can, but I can override you. You can influence where you want to go. You don't influence the exit because the owners ultimately make the decision of when they want to sell. So I'm going, I can't believe in that. So I told my employees, let's work our butts off for the next couple of years, and we have a path where it's tangible. We can monetize it. So now all of a sudden I take care of the retention piece of it. Recruiting, that's another big benefit. Where do you want to work at? You want to work at Adobe, Accenture, all these companies, they're not going to be growing as fast as we are. They're not going to be doubling in size, quadrupling in size. They're not going to hit $1 billion over the next 5 years. So your stock could potentially be an 8-bag or a 10-bag or whatever it is. So I can recruit very well as well. So now I got the retention, the recruiting through this currency. It's another form of currency. That's what it's always fascinating to see what turns into currency. In jail, it's cigarettes, right? And all these whole other currency, right? So you look at what the currency mechanisms are. Everyone talks about WhatsApp. How the heck were they valued at $19 billion? Facebook bought it for $19 billion. Holy smokes, that's a huge valuation. But when you get to the nuts and bolts of it, WhatsApp, Facebook bought it for $4 billion in cash and $15 billion on paper. So $4 billion, it's still a lot of money, but it's paper. So if you can acquire companies paying 75% paper, 25% cash, that's a heck of a deal for Facebook. Now, let's also look at it from the WhatsApp principles perspective. Well, the Facebook stock went up. Guess what? They actually got $29 billion for it because the stock went up. So it's a win-win situation. So the media focuses on certain things like, wow, this is a high valuation, but you look at that from a currency perspective. And what I love about that type of deal is that now you have alignment with the people you bought. Rather than saying, here's a bunch of cash and they check out, you get alignment. You got other people that are founders that want to stick around. These are earnouts, whatever it might be. Some people have opinions on earnouts. Is it good, is it bad, whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, there's alignment for growth, and when the stock goes up, this serves as another form of currency. And so now all of a sudden we got recruiting currency, we got retention currency, we got acquisitions, and again, the platform and scale to grow. Where else are we going to get that? And then the final one I want to comment on is what's great about being public is it's based on what is your future potential. Where are we going to be in 5 years? Go big or go home? Are we going to be bust? I have no idea. I might be talking in 5 years going, shoot, it didn't work out. Sorry, guys. But, That's not what I think will happen. But that's what it's all about. When you're public, you can use that currency to grow, and now it's about what are your future promises, how you're going to do. Versus when you're private, I'm sure most of you know this in here, you go to the bank, they're going to ask you, I want to see your financial statements. What are the trailing 12 months? What did you do last year? What did you do the year before? And my answer is, why does that matter? That's like in the past. I'm looking forward. Here's where I'm going. And that's what's great about being public is it's about the future. It's what you sell for the future because it's already in the past. So that's the currency, I would say.
I want to open the question, the audience up for some questions, but I have one last question before I open up the audience. This is for Lowell Hawthorne. So rumor has it you're a pretty good cook. So could you tell us could you give us an idea what the signature Lowell Hawthorne dish is?
Let me say this, and just for your information, that at some point in my career when I started the Golden Cross organization, one of the regrets that I had, that the fact that my parents never taught me how to make Jamaican beef patties. So I had no idea how to make patties. And I wrote about it in the book. The book talks about it.
You don't know how to do taxes, right?
My book talks about the journey from extortionists and the challenges. And that's one of the challenges that I had, is that I was actually buying patties for the first 4 years between 1989 and 1993. The company was growing so fast that my competitor decided that he was going to cut me off. And I remember I was vacationing in Jamaica at the time when I got a call from my sister that the person to remain nameless has discontinued your patty supply because here I am, my wife quit her job, my brothers, my sisters, and I can't make patties for nothing. And I remember speaking to my dad in Jamaica, and I said, Pops, I got to cut my vacation short. I got to run back to the United States. And I remember my father saying, young man, all things work together for good to them that love the Lord. I said, Pops must be crazy. I got no patties. And he's telling me that all things work together for good. And I came back to the United States and I began my journey, a journey that took me to London in quest for patty, to Chicago, back to Jamaica, back and forth, trying to learn the art of making Jamaican patties. After 9 months of agony on the road, I finally learned how to make a Jamaican patty. And let me say, had he not stopped me, had he not cut off my patty supply, I don't think I would have been in this forum this evening. So opportunity through challenges, and that is one of the great lessons that I've learned. And and today, I can cook a good salmon, and I can cook a good fish. My wife could tell you.
Laura, is that true? Cheryl, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a question about going public.
You want us to answer over here?
Sure. Hi. I have a question. Okay, so we have a transportation business we're EO members. We have a transportation company that Louis wrote the software for, and now we're launching a software company. And one of the struggles we have is going public. Right now we're self-funded. We go public, then suddenly we have to answer to other people. And I would like to know how you feel about having to answer to other people. You can't do whatever you want whenever you want anymore, that kind of thing.
That's a great question. So I thought long and hard about, and going public means a lot of different things. There's a lot of ways to go public. You go over the counter, OTC, you can do pink sheets, you can do reverse merger, you can do a self-registration through an S1. So it also depends on what your objective is. Why are you going public? Is it to raise capital? Is it to, because there's plenty of money out there, right, if it makes sense. And that in itself, the fundraising activity is also a journey in itself. I mean, there's things that work, things that don't. I did a lot of pitches. I got to a point, a lot of learning lessons there. So I got to a point where I was doing so many pitches that I stopped caring. I basically said, you know what, you're either interested or you're not. You can find a million reasons why you're not interested. concentration's bad, this is bad, or we haven't been in business long enough, it's not SaaS, it's not cloud, et cetera, et cetera. But after you overcome all that and you figure out going public is the right way, you got to then decide, and being public, you have other shareholders. So where are your shareholders, interests? And it's all about, they're shareholders for a reason, they're investors. Well, what do investors want? They want a return. How do they get a return? When the stock price goes up. So, you can also get people that short you, right? So then they make money when the stock goes down. And then there's all these creative vehicles, right? There's things called death spirals where people will loan you money and then they'll short you and they make money on the way down too. So it's almost like a craps table. People bet on the don't pass line, the pass line, and the odds are exactly the same. But, so it's not as simple as, hey, do I have to answer to other people? In my particular deal, I only did the deal because I was going to be the chairman, CEO, and president. So I wasn't giving up control. I also still have a lot of shares as well. So in your situation, you have to figure out, number one, why do I want to go public? Is it because of the money? Because there's plenty of money out there. Do I want to go public because of the scale and the platform to grow? And if I do want to grow, then are there other means to do that? And you look at most founders, they get diluted down to 5%, especially if they have had multiple series A, B, C, and things like that. The GoPro founder did pretty well. I think he ended up with 50%. So those are all things you have to evaluate. Zuckerberg, in his instance, they got different type of shares. You got A and B, and from a voting perspective. So number one, figure out your objective, why you want to go public. Number two, figure out what's more important. Is it the control thing? Because I was, it resonates with me because that's the reason why I didn't do a partnership as well. But I looked at it as the costs of going public are minimal compared to the benefits of the scale that I'm going to get. Does that answer your question? Is it? Okay.
Alvin?
So these are amazing stories, and I think
Alvin, to your left.
Oh, thank you. They're amazing stories, and I think about this concept of going big, and knowing that probably along the way there were some times when you kind of thought long and hard about whether going big was going to work out for you, right? And so, you mentioned the beef patty thing. So I want the others, if you can, share that moment where you might have had a little doubt or some struggles and how you overcome it. Does that make sense? Devin?
There we go. Yeah. So I think the YOLO concept is popular. It's been the past few years. I embrace that. You only live life once. There's also something called DGAF as well, so I embrace that as well. Don't give a F. So I really think that in terms of, yeah, you can look it up. I'm sure it's out there. In terms of, if you're going to do it, you might as well go big. I've always embraced that, which is probably the reason why Richard invited me tonight. Why not? What is there to lose? Why not go for it? And it's being fearless. And there are times where you struggle with it. It's extremely lonely. It's very hard. So there are challenging moments. So having the mental fortitude, having the tenacity of, hey, I'll overcome this. And it's very challenging because your whole team, your staff, your employees, your partners, your customers are looking at you going, hey, what's going to happen? And even in your mind going, I don't know, this is pretty tough, but you got to say, don't worry, everything's going to be great. This is just part of the journey. And if you're not able to be the best salesperson for your company, it also blends in with your tolerance for risk. What's your appetite for risk? If it's high, then obviously it's also high returns. And you got to be comfortable. And I think it's healthy to be outside of your comfort zone because that's where you learn and grow. It's almost like when you work out. When you go work out, you do 10 reps, 4 sets, 10 reps. I believe you're just maintaining. But mentally, when you can push beyond that, we can do that extra rep or 2 reps, you get 80% of the gains right there. So that's where I try and push myself. That's what I do. And there has been times where you fall, and it's tough, and you got to find that support in your life. Who's that person? Is it your spouse? Is it your kids, your family? And it's not easy, but is it worth it? And those are things you always go through for sure.
For me personally, I am motivated and inspired by the life-changing experiences that I have had, whether it's my scholarship recipients, because we do over 60 scholarships a year, whether it's just fueling entrepreneur and entrepreneurship within my organization, that also drives me. But I'm also driven by my faith, and I'm known for use the acronyms FAITH, and the first one is that food always in the house. And the second one is fortitude, aspiration, aspire for all that you can be, and of course information. Servants board. I was once a member of HSBC, not because I'm looking for work, because I want to understand the complexity within the lending industry. I serve on Bronx Overall Economic Development Board because I want to know what's coming in the Bronx and what's going on. So it's about information. And of course, tenacity, be tenacious. You're going to be knocked down along that journey, whether it's, in my case, extortionists. You got to pay them weekly in the early days to stay in business, or whether it's machineries, human capital, complexity with franchise business, and last but not least, which is H, which represents humility. Be humble, and then remember whence you came, and certainly that will keep you going as a businessman.
So, for me, I think the question was, what was that moment, right? Yeah. I think, like I said, for me, it was that realization, that moment that we realized that we could sell a lot of product to a lot of people. And then figuring out all the things that had to happen to actually deliver it and where to go. So, and that came out of a very challenging situation of having all these chargebacks to have to pay. We also, did retail stores at one point where I got my teeth kicked in as well. That's a tough business, man. That's a tough business. But I think the sort of the overall thing here is, you're gonna, as you're going on this journey to be big, right? You're gonna make some choices, and the choices are gonna be, as you said, do I want to be a lifestyle company, and do I want to, create this great life for myself and for my family, or do I want to create generational wealth, right? And do I want to create a enterprise that 100 years after I'm gone, people may not know who I am, but that enterprise will still be there, and there will still be a legacy. I think one of the things, and I'll speak on your behalf, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is we're both in legacy businesses. So his mission is bringing Caribbean food to the world. Our mission was bringing, first started off with just getting off the street so we could have enough food to eat and be warm. That was a great mission, worked out well. And then as we were endeavoring to get off of the street, we'd go to retailers and we talked to them about what we were doing and our products, and inevitably the response back would be, well, you make products for black people and we already got Vaseline. So, it's funny, but it's true, and it's unfortunate. And so we took on this mission that we were going to change the way retailers thought about multicultural consumers, right? And so it was my grandmother's heritage, and so there was a pride in the product, right? It was our own realizations of the struggles that we were going through just to bring this product to market. And so with that comes a lot of pride, and so you go in, and then you're fighting on behalf of a consumer that was so underserved by retail, and I'm sure as you've gone into retail, it's the same thing, right? So he He went into a market where he was selling Caribbean cuisine and patties, and I bet when you first got there, they said, well, yeah, we'll put it in our heavy ethnic stores in the Bronx, right? And I've got 2,000 stores, but I only got 150 stores that over-index in black people, and that's where you'll be. And oh, by the way, you got to provide your own refrigeration because these other guys here already get the refrigeration, right? So not too different, right? But for us, we took on this this attitude of we were going to liberate the consumer from the retailer, and we would tell them that. And so that was a drive. So I guess what I'm getting at is that in everything that you do, there's a reason and a purpose that goes beyond the actual business that you're creating. And if you can find that purpose and you can latch onto it and you can stay true to it, you can deliver some incredible value. And that's where you get the benefit of culture is what we were talking about, right? Because then the culture now is not about what it is that you want it to be or what it is that you envisioned it to be. It becomes a culture that's about a mission, right? And it's purposeful, and we're doing this for a reason. And so we would go to retailers and we would say to them, for those the black women in here, you'll understand this probably better than the black men or the white men in here. But the ethnic aisle is the only place in America that segregation is still legal. So if you think about that, am I right? All right. From a beauty perspective, if you're a black woman and you're looking for products for your hair, you have to go to a designated section that's for black women, right? And we always felt that there was something wrong about that, right? We always felt like you should treat this consumer as she deserves more than just Vaseline. If she chooses Vaseline, that's great. But also she should have access to the best of everything and let her decide what she wants to buy and where she wants to shop. And so that's what we've done. So that's created a mission inside of our company that allows people to really drive towards doing something bigger than themselves and bigger than their paychecks. And so while not a moment per se, but certainly the thing that drives us and that keeps us going. And then when you have a mission like that, it's incredible the type of talent that you can recruit, right? The type of talent that basically recruits you and comes in and wants to be a part of what you're doing, right? And so, how many of you have heard of a B Corp? Great. So we're a B Corp, right? And so what that means is that we're a benefit corporation. We don't just think about our profits. We also think about our impact on the social environments, right? And so we're building a business that is connected to the very fabric of how society engages around beauty, right? And so that drives us and it keeps us motivated. And I think every day if I were to be honest with it, every day we have a new moment, right? So.
Any other questions? Yeah. Tamara?
As entrepreneurs, there are always metrics that we should look at on a weekly or monthly basis. What are the ones, whether it's EBITDA or, revenue per employee, as we think about going big, are there some that we might not know of or we should look at that you're obsessed with that you look at regularly? And do you hold your employees or management team to meet those?
Yeah, I'm driven by number. We have our annual operating plan, in which that establishes the goals for each quarter, and we want to ensure that those goals are met, no matter what they are, whether it's sales, whether it's EBITDA, whether it's cost of goods, whatever it is. These goals are clearly defined and articulated to the team, and we ensure that they are measured monthly. And for me personally, I'm a number guy. I watch the scale every day in terms of sales, not only at the corporate headquarters, but also at the franchise level, to see what moves within the system, and at the end of the day, what's your bottom line? Because you are in a business in which commodities constantly change every day, so you got to stay on top of it and what you're costing, especially from a manufacturing perspective, especially when you're working with long-term contract, whether it's the school system, which is a 4-year contract, where the price remains the same for 4 years. If commodity increases, you're stuck. There's nothing you can do. You cannot go to the Board of Education and say, I want my flour price is up. So you're stuck, and so you have to make sure your projections are right, and your forecasting is correct, and do those kind of analysis within the organization.
Thomas?
Yes, my question is, I'm a candidate for City Council in Upper Manhattan. I'm an asset manager in Harlem, and so community is very important to me. I know the gentleman in the middle of your store in Harlem is under attack. The government's thinking about shutting it down and building a development in terms of gentrification. Would you three talk about your culture in terms of your values? African Americans and communities of color are losing businesses left hand and right, but we see Africans and Caribbeans being really, really successful. Could you talk about the dynamics of family and cultural values that are very conducive to capitalism? Thank you.
I guess for me personally, I came to this country for one reason. I've left behind beautiful seas and sunshine. So the reason why I'm here is to get a piece of the American dream and to get my bite out of this big pie and achieve my goals and aspirations. So complacency is no place in my book. It's about being aggressive. The sky is the limit. For us, Golden Crust, we are in 9 states. We got many more to go. We are living in a country where we're over 310 million people. So we're looking, as I said, we have a 2020 vision. And the 2020 vision is that by 2020, all Americans will be eating, or have heard of Jamaican beef patties. And that's the vision. That's the mission, and we are very passionate about it internally in our organization. We live it and we eat it.
So, I think for us, it's about creating opportunities, right? So community is important, but this is our home, right? And so we must create opportunities for those of us that have been fortunate enough to be successful, right, and to have seen the success. So it's us investing in educational programs. Lowell talked about, what's that, 60 scholarships?
Yes.
Damn, man, I got to catch up. But it's us investing in education. It's us investing in mentoring programs. It's us being involved in the community. It's us contributing economic sustainability inside of those communities and not necessarily charity. So we don't believe in writing a check, but we will invest in other entrepreneurs and help them scale. We have a program that we call Community Commerce, where this year alone we will invest over $1 million in our communities that we serve, both in West Africa and here. So I don't think there's a cultural sort of, if I understood the question correctly, I don't think that it's necessarily cultural. I just think it's up to all of us to contribute to all of our societies, no matter where you're from, no matter who you are. This is our home. This is where we make our living. And whether you're from the Upper East Side or you're from, Spanish Harlem or the Bronx, it's your responsibility to do something about that community that you're in, and to reinvest in those communities and to help those people that are in those communities rise above where they are today, right? So that's really how I think about it. I think that we're living in a time where the opportunity to do that is better than it's ever been. But it's about us, like organizations like this, not just helping each other talk about how we run our businesses, but also helping us to figure out models that we can use to impact our communities. Right?
I'd like to address the question as well. I think that this is kind of more of a broader question in general, because and it kind of goes to this gentleman's question earlier in terms of what makes it all worth it? Where's the tenacity? Why are these gentlemen able to survive when there's other political obstacles going on? So you got to really believe in what you want to do. And there's an exercise called the 5 whys. You ask yourself why 5 times, you get to the root. There's many entrepreneurs in here. There's a lot of guests as well. But it's tough. It's super tough. And you go through days where you're like, why am I doing this? Why do I put myself through this? And that why has to be strong enough to punch through. So that level of tenacity to really want it and persevere and fight and say, I want it because of this, and that's why I'm doing it. To have that level of firm belief. Otherwise, you're just going to give up. You're going to say, it's not worth it. This just is not worth my time, energy. So you got to love it. I mean, the common expression is be passionate. If you have passion, love what you do what you love, you'll be successful. But when reality hits, because not every day is going to be a rosy day, there's going to be days where you're going to be thinking, how the hell am I going to make payroll? This is crazy. Or my employees are quitting. They're stealing, my other people. There's a talent war. My competition, my biggest customer just walked. Whatever it is, there's going to be challenges. So do you have that fortitude and the mental toughness to say, you know what, it's worth it for me to stay in the game and fight? And that, I think, addresses both these questions, which is, when the tough gets going, where are you at? Do you get going as well? So, and that's where I think the success comes from, because there are opportunities out there. I mean, I'd be the first one to admit I'm not going to find the cure to cancer. I mean, or solve world hunger, or boil the ocean and purify the whole, all the water. But business is a different thing. There's a lot of levers and controls you can change and dials, and so there's a way out. You just don't give up. As long as you're willing not to give up and the purpose is higher, then you won't. And that's what lets you punch through. And that win tastes so sweet that it's addictive. You're like, I can do more. I can do more. And that's the whole premise behind this, is go big. And the bigger you go, the more you want. And that's part of all of this. So individually, you have to figure out, what do you really want? Why are you doing it? What are you going to do? What makes it all worth it? And I think how you're raised, where you're born, how you grow up, has to do with that DNA. And I can speak as an Asian American, Korean American. My parents sacrificed a lot to come to this country, so I feel like I have to make it worth it for them to do that. They both had college educations, but they're not going to get a job at a corporate America. They had to do the stereotypical open up a deli or a dry cleaner, like a lot of Koreans, right? So I'm like, wow, they sacrificed a lot for me to do well. So that, that makes me, I gotta make it worth their sacrifice for that. So that's why they say a lot of immigrants also do extremely well, first generation, second generation. But then at some point, that entrepreneurial level of tenacity and fortitude isn't there anymore. And I'm only speculating, so that's what I feel.
We're going to take one last question.
This has been great, thank you. Being a parent, I always wonder if you had to pick the 3 things that you deem were the real secrets to your success, whether it be K through 12 education, college education.
Definitely wasn't college.
Whether it be your parents saying you could, your parents saying you couldn't, mentoring, if you had to focus in on the 3, I'd love to hear what they are.
So I'll say, for me, the first was my mother, who just, my mother, even in our business, is the same thing as when I was a child growing up. Like, the only time my mother would have a conversation with me was when I didn't do something right. That led to an expectation of always doing something right? Because I didn't want to have the conversation that I would have if it was not right. So my mother, and then I think the second thing I would attribute it to actually is my college education, because I happened to be in an environment where it was all about entrepreneurship, and I mean, you know, we all had like side businesses. I mean, I need to tell you guys, like from freshman year, we were always trying to figure out how to sell something. So I think that was very impactful. And then I think the last piece was just this this realization that I actually, at 21 years old with a great education, had nowhere to go, and I had to fend for myself, right? So I think that had a lot to do with what I became as well.
Yeah. For me personally, I believe it's my parents and just being in this pursuit to leave a legacy and to live a life that my children can model. And living by what I consider to be the 4 Ds, the drive, discipline, determination, and the desire, knowing that success has no name, success belongs to no one, and knowing that your perspective determines your provision, and these things truly keep me going day in and day out.
I would say, for me, this is my disclaimer as well. So whether I turned out good or not, I don't know. So if you use these words of wisdom or nuggets, I'm not sure how your kids will turn out. So for me, it was a weird dichotomy in terms of the relationship. So my mom spoiled me a lot. You know, I was a paper boy when I was growing up. As I mentioned earlier, I was an only child, and both my parents basically said, "You're on your own. You got no brothers and sisters. When we die, you're by yourself, so you better figure things out, and figure things out pretty quick." And I was like, "Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad." I mean, this is when I was 6, right? And I was like, "Well, can you get me a brother or sister? I mean, like, I need some support here." And so, but I would say that my mom raised me with a lot of love. Like, I delivered newspapers when I was like 9. I started doing telemarketing when I was 11 or 12. My voice was changing. I had people I was calling hitting on me and thinking I was a girl. It was like really embarrassing, right? It kind of scarred me a little bit. But I learned how to sell. I overcame it, right? And I sold newspaper subscriptions on the phone. I did door-to-door sales. So I really earned money. I bought my first car. So from a money-earning capacity, I learned pretty early on. So my mom, that's how she raised me. My dad, on the other hand, was tough love. He was like, he had all these weird Korean expressions, and I didn't understand half of them. But it was like, when you pick up one end of the stick, you pick up the other. And I'm like, yeah, I guess you're picking up the stick. Right? So what he meant, though, was that take responsibility for your action. And he said, if you're going to go be a bad kid, you're going to rob a store because you're greedy and you want cash, and you end up in jail, I'm not going to bail you out. You figure things out. So that's how he raised me. It's independent choice. It was tough love. And I feel very fortunate because I could have turned out to be a bad kid. But I made the right decisions along the way, and for me it worked, that tough love. So it was a combination of the tough love with my mom spoiling me, helping me out. She helped me fold newspapers in the morning. She made meals for me. So it was kind of a combination of all those things. Parenting is tough. That's why I don't have any kids. So good luck with that. But for me, I mean, I'm ambitious. And one of the things my mentors told me was, stop asking why. You are who you are. Go out there and be great. And that's what I've taken to heart.
Okay.